Hello, everyone. If you love dramatic stories about husbands, wives, betrayal, love, and unexpected twists of fate, then be sure to subscribe to the channel. So, are you ready? Then get comfortable. We're starting our story.
There was a time when Daniel's presence had been enough. When his laughter had filled the spaces between her ribs and his touch had sent warmth coursing through her veins. Their love had been simple then, uncomplicated and full of promise. She had clung to the certainty of it, wrapped herself in the comfort of knowing that he would always be there. But over the years, something had shifted. Or maybe it hadn't been a shift at all, but rather a slow erosion, a quiet wearing down of the edges that had once made them sharp and new. The love was still there, steady and reliable, but it had become like an old house, solid, familiar, but lacking the spark that had once made it feel like home. The days melted into one another, each one predictable, each conversation revolving around the same routine. The bills, the groceries, his long hours at work, her responsibilities. The love between them had not disappeared, but it had settled into something quieter, something less urgent. She had tried not to let it bother her, had convinced herself that this was what marriage was supposed to be, a slow, steady companionship rather than a burning fire. And yet, there were nights when she lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the rhythmic sound of his breathing beside her, and felt a hollowness she could not name. It wasn't unhappiness, not exactly. It was something softer, something more elusive, a quiet restlessness that settled deep in her bones. She did not speak of it. How could she? How could she tell Daniel that she missed something she could not even define? That she longed for a spark she did not know how to reignite? He loved her. She knew this. He showed it in the way he held her hand absent-mindedly while watching TV, in the way he always made sure her car had a full tank of gas, in the way he kissed her forehead before leaving for work. But something inside her had begun to shift, to unravel in ways she did not understand. She tried to push the feeling away, to bury it beneath the weight of her responsibilities. But it lingered, whispering to her in the quiet moments, in the spaces between Daniel's words. And though she did not yet know it, the cracks in the foundation of her life had already begun to form. And all it would take was a single spark to bring it crumbling down. It was on an ordinary afternoon that the first crack widened. She had been running errands, her mind clouded with the mundane details of her day. What to cook for dinner, when to call the plumber about the leaking faucet, whether Daniel would be home on time. The routine of it all felt suffocating, an endless loop of responsibility and expectation. And then she saw him, Adrian. The name would come later, but in that moment, he was simply a presence, a man with an easy smile, a voice that carried warmth, and eyes that lingered just a second too long. They had met by chance, a fleeting moment born from a small accident, her dropping a bag of groceries, him bending to help, their hands brushing for the briefest of moments. It should have meant nothing, but it did. That moment stretched, a heartbeat too long, an inhale that felt different. When she thanked him, he didn't just nod and walk away like any other stranger would have. He smiled, an amused, knowing kind of smile, as if he had glimpsed something beneath her carefully held composure. "It's no problem," he said. "Long day." She hesitated. The correct answer, the safe answer, was to simply nod and move on. But something about the way he looked at her made her pause. And before she could stop herself, she sighed and admitted, "A long year." His eyes flickered with something she couldn't quite place. Understanding, maybe. Recognition. For a moment, it was as if the world had quieted around them, leaving only the two of them standing in the middle of a busy street, wrapped in a silence that spoke louder than words. And then, just as quickly as it had happened, it was over. She offered a small, polite smile and turned away, telling herself it was nothing, that it would end there. But as she walked away, she could still feel his eyes on her back. And despite everything, she found herself wishing she had turned around. She told herself she wouldn't think about him, but she did. It wasn't intentional. He would slip into her mind at odd moments, in the spaces between her daily routines. She would be folding laundry or stirring a pot on the stove when suddenly she would remember the way his eyes had held hers, the way his voice had curled around her like a thread pulling her in. She hadn't even realized how much she had missed feeling noticed. Daniel was good to her, steady, reliable, the foundation upon which she had built her life. But he no longer looked at her the way Adrian had in that brief exchange. She hated herself for thinking it, for feeling a sense of longing over a stranger she barely knew. And yet, the thought persisted, creeping in like an uninvited guest. She didn't seek him out, but life had a way of weaving people together in unexpected ways. The next time she saw Adrian, it wasn't by chance. She had gone to a cafe, one she rarely visited, simply to get out of the house for a while. And there he was, sitting at a corner table, flipping through a book, his expression thoughtful. Their eyes met, and this time, she didn't look away. He raised a brow, a slow smile forming on his lips. "We meet again." A part of her wanted to turn around and leave, to ignore whatever pull had drawn her here. But another part, the part that had been restless for far too long, made her take a step forward. "Looks like we do." She should have left. The moment she sat down across from Adrian, she knew she was treading dangerous ground. Yet she stayed. Their conversation started light, casual pleasantries, an exchange of book recommendations, small talk about the weather. But beneath it all was something unspoken, an energy neither of them acknowledged, yet both of them felt. He made her laugh. Not the polite, forced laughter she had grown accustomed to, but the kind that bubbled up naturally, surprising even herself. She had forgotten what that felt like. "I don't usually do this," she admitted, swirling the coffee in her cup. "Do what?" Adrian asked, tilting his head slightly. She hesitated. "Sit and talk to strangers." His lips curved into a slow, knowing smile. "Neither do I." The words hung between them, charged with something unspoken. She should have left, but she didn't. She stood at the edge of something she could not name. Daniel, steady and true, waited at home, unaware of the storm within her. Adrian, wild and unpredictable, had awakened something she wasn't sure she could ignore. She wanted both. She wanted neither. And as she stared at her reflection in the darkened cafe window, she realized she no longer knew who she was. And she no longer knew who to choose.
Well, that's it. Guys, if you enjoy dramatic stories about love, betrayal, and unexpected twists, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Your support helps create even more exciting stories. See you in the next videos.